Hello and welcome to CivilNet. With us today in studio is Dr. Garo Armen, the founder and director of the Children of Armenia Fund. Hello and welcome.
Thank you very much, Paul. I'm very happy to be here.
You've worn many hats in your very illustrious career, from scientist to businessman to educator. Now we introduce you as a philanthropist whose work, whose individual efforts have touched thousands of lives in Armenia, and you've helped raise more than $10 million to help the children of Armenia. How did all this get started?
Actually, we've raised now essentially $20 million in the last 10 years. My first visit to Armenia was 2001. And I wasn't a tourist, so I came to explore to see what the country was like. And one of the things that touched me the most was the plight of the children, you know. And I understood the difficulties of the country because when the Soviet Union pulled out of subsidizing Armenia, we were left without really an appropriate budget to take care of a lot of our institutions and schools and everything else. So at the time, I was getting ready to step in and help a corporation, a major international corporation, from its difficulties. So for a period of about 2 years, from 2001 to 2003, I did not come back, even though there was a burning desire in me to come back as soon as possible. So in 2003, in August 2003, I came back, and we had a very structured schedule of visiting a number of villages. And I was asked to visit a very desolate village in Armavir Mars called Karakert. And this was a request made by a Boston priest who was living in Armenia at the time, Father Dajjad, who probably many know here. And on the way from Gumbri to Yerevan, I stopped in Karakert, and the situation was very visibly difficult. And that was the genesis of it, and I'm happy to tell you the details of what happened after that.
Oh, we'd love to hear it. You went on to adopt a number of villages, and you've implemented all kinds of help there. Tell us about it.
Well, the first visit to Karakert was interesting because it looked like a village that had no life in it. You know, even though there were people at corners of streets talking to each other, you just did not feel any energy in the village. So I spoke to a few people and I asked them what do they do in the village, and the answer was nothing. You know, each family was given a little piece of land, and through some production they fended for themselves, but there were really no job opportunities. And there was an old name, Baron Davityan. He asked me to go and visit the local school. I mean, the mentality is, you know, in spite of their difficulties, in spite of the fact that there was really no source of water and any other means in the village, education was still foremost in their minds. So we went to visit the school, and the situation was deplorable. I mean, there was no heating. Where there was heating, they were burning some really fuel that would contaminate their walls and environment, and poor children were inhaling that on cold days. Windows were broken. I mean, overall, it wasn't a dignified environment at all. Not an environment that would be becoming for children to learn, certainly. So we made a decision. In fact, at that time, I had promised that I'd come back. And during that first visit, nobody really believed that I'd come back. But we were back there in less than 3 months and held a town hall meeting to outline their priorities. And remarkably, education was on top of their list. In a village of about 4,000 people, close to 700 came to the town hall meeting, which was absolutely remarkable in a decrepit hall. And so that's when we started our project. After Karakert was underway, this was maybe 6-9 months post our initiation of the effort, a neighboring village came to me and said, what is our sin that we're not benefiting from your efforts? So we decided to start our efforts in Dalarig, and then Lernagog, and then Miasnikian, and Shenig, and so on. So all in all now, we have reached about 12 villages, where not only do we renovate school buildings and kindergartens and clinics and cultural centers and playgrounds and some streets, but we also have very well-defined programs that basically provide the content for these facilities for their optimal use. For example, one of the things that I noticed, Paul, was when we renovated the first school, the doors were shut locked at 2:30 after the regular school hours were over. And so I came in and I said, you know, we have a safe, warm, nice school, and we're not utilizing it. So that begged the question of, should we start after school programs? And now we are very well known for our after school programs throughout our region, where school system is expended significantly in terms of the benefit that it provides to the children. So our children now are amongst the most prepared in Armenia. In fact, there are nationally held debate clubs where our region has won many competitions because of their level of preparedness. Whereas when we started this many years ago, nobody would have ever dreamt such is possible.
That is one aspect, education. You've touched on so many others, healthcare and civic development. Tell us about those programs.
Everything really started gradually. When we decided to implement programs in Karakurt, school, as you said, was the highest priority. But soon thereafter, you know, when I made the promise that I'd intervene, and at the time, Children of Armenia Fund had only 2 employees, so we were doing mostly exploratory work. Now we have close to 45 people between our employees and contractors, full-time contractors. So when the school issue started getting addressed, we noticed that there were health problems amongst the young people. There were major health deficits. So we decided to invest a little bit in the clinic, the local clinic. And it wasn't just in really renovating the infrastructure. It was also, how do we upgrade medical delivery to the beneficiaries? So we started training doctors and nurses, and in fact developed the best of the best treatment protocols, intervention protocols, specifically designed for villages, because as you can imagine, some of the healthcare challenges in the villages are very different than what we see in cities. They have their own specific problems. So we are known, I think, today as as having developed the best treatment protocols for rural regions. In fact, our training programs are now attended and desired by many, many other villages that are not COAF villages today. We hope that they will be soon, because our ambition, having gone through the last 10 years of experimentation and perfecting the art of doing what we do, our ambition is to now expand this to 100 villages over the next 10 years. And that will start moving the needle, if you will, in a meaningful fashion. But as you said, Paul, so medical needs were the next major area of expansion for us, and that included primarily how do we, for example, make sure that preventive care is in place, because as you know, preventive care is much cheaper, much easier to implement than intervention when there's a real serious problem. And our target was also children. Of course, we paid attention to the elderly as well, but children, young mothers, pregnancy care. You know, these are very important starting points, because unless you really put them on the right path, then you can encounter problems down the road. I mean, silly things for like our children, families in our villages did not know the importance of brushing teeth at a young age. In fact, the belief was that until a child was 7 years old, there was no need to brush their teeth. It sounds silly, but a lot of the ailments really are seeded in the mouth. It's a point of entry for a lot of the bacteria and viruses, and a lot of these pathogens, if you will, cause problems later on in life. So little things that make a huge difference were really implemented. And then we noticed other social, structural issues. You know, when we came to our villages, there was almost a fear of expression. Fear of expression because it was a closed system. People, the children, did not understand that they had the right to speak. They had the right to express themselves. And in families, not in all, but some families, we had issues with abuse at home, how to be able to deal with psychological, sociological issues were not really being talked about, because there was a shame factor associated with these issues. And so we established our psychosocial programs, and now our psychosocial programs are probably amongst the best in any rural part of the world, not just in Armenia. And so as a result of these programs, people are able to express themselves better. They come around and talk about problems. And as you know, you cannot have solutions unless the problems are expressed. So now, knowing what the issues are, we're much better able to implement solutions. And some of the results have been absolutely terrific. I mean, a number of children who had problems with depression, anxiety, learning disabilities, and so on and so forth, are now exemplary students in having tackled these issues and solved their problems. So we're seeing a lot of improvement in that regard. And economic development is the fourth major leg of our efforts. It's probably the most complicated, but once again, there are easy fixes. And in doing all of this, we collaborate with a lot of the multinational organizations. One of the things we do, Paul, is when I started conceiving the idea of COAF, the reaction from many of the US Armenians was, do we really need another Armenian organization? Because we have so many of them. And the reason we started COAF was because no other organization was really entrenched in village fixing the way we envisioned it needed to be done. So there are wonderful Armenian organizations. Without them, our life certainly at COAF would be difficult, but I think Armenia wouldn't be what it is today. What we're doing is not really competing with other organizations. In fact, we're providing a network, a capability. We're being the general contractor, if you will, for many other organizations to also participate in what we do. And I'm very happy to tell you that we've done well with other Armenian organizations participating in what we do. Non-Armenian organizations, foreign agencies, foreign government agencies participating in what we do, as well as now in the last 3 years, a tremendous participation by local businesses who are practicing the fancy word social responsibility, but I think they're sincere in what they do, and we're delighted that they've become our partners in many of the projects.
You've done so much, and the world has taken notice. Media has written about you from New York all the way to Armenia, and you've set up an example of how things can be changed by one person's individual efforts. How do you go about raising $20 million? How do you convince people from New York all the way to Armenia here to help you with your efforts?
Well, first, I want to respectfully correct you. It's not one person's effort. I catalyzed this effort, but we have a terrifically wonderful organization here in Armenia who are really the guts of everything that we provide, and they are extremely well skilled. I am very proud of the fact that we have a long tenure with many of our employees who are not employees, part of our family, really. They have been with us for a long time. And we also have a good but much smaller organization in New York. And of course, as I mentioned, wonderful partners at every level that we work with. But this is an interesting question. So when I began about 10 years ago, the fundraising program, our first ambition was targeting about $1 million to be raised in our very first year, because the problems in rural Armenia, even in one village, were so dire that it would take serious money to intervene. And also start building a local organization to be able to implement things. So I called a number of my friends and associates in 2004 and explained to them the problem. And I told them that this was not just an Armenia issue. It was a human tragedy, because you know, a life going to waste is not tolerable, no matter where it is. It could be in Armenia or Uzbekistan or even Turkey. It would be a pity. And my friends and my business acquaintances were very generous. Most of them were non-Armenian, actually. The first year, we raised $1.4 million, which shocked everyone. Hadn't been done with certainly a new organization before. And of that 1.4 million, over 1 million came from non-Armenian sources, which was another shocking factor. Now, over the years, Armenians have become much larger in terms of the total monies raised each year. And we've raised since inception about $20 million to date, and spent most of it because the problems are so dire that need attention so immediately that we cannot afford to really put the money in a bank account and save a small portion or spend a small portion of it for programs. So we pretty much spend the monies we raise every year. We have been privileged to be able to raise significant amounts of money every year, and that's a combination of the results that we have generated, which have continued to impress people, as well as the goodwill of many, many donors, Armenian and non-Armenian, who have really reached out to us and expressed their desire to help Armenians in difficult conditions. So, you know, Africa is very fashionable in terms of for people to help, and of course, Africa has major needs, and we should pay attention to it. But there are so many Armenians out there, so many Armenians that in aggregate probably equal another Africa. And because they represent small countries and small areas of difficulty, they don't get the proper attention. And I think our job is to make sure that they too become fashionable. So we've started with Armenia. Our ambition is now to expand to 100 villages. And perhaps with a little bit of encouragement, would like to implement these programs in other countries as well. Because Armenia as an island probably won't be viable. But if we have neighbors that are also benefiting from these programs, and they benefit through our own efforts to help them, that establishes a kind of camaraderie and familiarity love and trust amongst neighbors that no political agreement can establish. So that would be a dream, and but one needs to have a dream in order to be able to carry on the ambitions.
We have a lot of work to do, don't we?
A lot of work.
We could spend hours talking about you because you're a fascinating person with all of your career and all the other realms that you've touched the world with. Unfortunately, we don't have time, but final question, when you walk through one of your villages today and you see kids that are healthier, bright-eyed, and they're getting nutrition, they're getting health care, what do you feel? What does Garo Armen experience?
Well, I feel that I have done my little part to contribute to the betterment of our society here, because we have so much potential. As I tell my children, there is a reason for why Armenians have been around for so long. And this reason perhaps is something we don't understand, but at a minimum we have to respect it. And we have to, in modern times, contribute to make sure that the legacy of the past continues, because our people deserve at least some of the fine facilities and capabilities that the rest of the world enjoys. And if we can do our little part to contribute to that, it's a great joy for us. And so when I see children that now can compete on a world scale, not just compete in their villages, but they have the capability to innovate, to really contribute to their environment, their society, to Armenia, and even in some cases outside of Armenia, that's a sense of great pride and joy. So that's how I feel.
Very well said. Thank you very much, Dr. Garo Armen, visionary, philanthropist, benefactor, and a trendsetter.
Thank you very much for the compliments.
Thank you at home for joining us on CivilNet.